Using Microsoft Teams in Glow. Welcome to Introduction to Teams. Thank you for joining us at today's webinar. As you can see from the screen, these are the topics we plan to cover. There will be a second webinar to cover a more detailed approach to using Teams. Now at the moment I am sharing my screen with you so that you can see how to create a team in Glow Teams. So first of all, your screen may look similar to mine. It may look different on a mobile device, depending on Apple or Android, depending on the machine that you are using, okay? So what you're really looking for is this main area here entitled Teams. I've filtered out some of my teams, and that's the button there that I would use to filter. You can see you have classes, professional learning communities, staff, and then others. So I've just shown you a selection of the teams that I'm in. But what we're actually looking for here is join or create team. So we're going to choose that just now. Now, if you are looking to join a team that already exists, they can share code with you. But if you are going to start a brand new team for pupils or for your class, then this is where you begin. So we're going to choose create team. Now, the one we're going to choose today is a class team. I'm going to just go over that again. It just went a little bit quickly there. You can see the options. The reason I'm picking class is because that's the most common one that most people were asking for today. So let's look at that. I'm just going to call this one Testing 2020. We can add a description in here so that people know what to do, but I'm going to leave it blank because this is just a testing version of it just now. Okay, that's going to create a team for us. Our next step is to add some students. I'm going to add one student I have permission to add just now. So that is a pupil from Moorfoot Primary. We have permission to add him. So we're going to add him just now. We also would go through this using our Glow logins. So many of you would be thinking, what if there's a few Josh Dochertys? So we're just going to type that in just now. And actually, when I let that go, you can see there is quite a few. Most of the time, it will come up with the one from your class, but sometimes it doesn't. So when you're doing it, if you just hover over here, you can see there, it's popped up on the screen, the school he belongs to. It's also got his Glow login, and that's another way to find them. So if you're not sure, you can type in their address, GW14, their name, or 15, and so forth. And that will again come up with the child that you might be looking for. So there's a few options there to find them. I would say probably the easiest way is their Glow logins, because there won't be a different version of that out there, whereas there could be several Josh Dochertys and so on. Then we're going to add teachers. Now if we add teachers, they straight away become owners, so we can talk about memberships later on. I'm just going to add Mrs. Irvin just now, and she knows that this is just a test. So I'm going to add Mrs. Irvin. And once I've added all my students and teachers, I'm going to close that. And I now have a team with members in it. And you can see I've added Josh, I've added Mrs. Irvin, and along the top here, we've got some options. We've got files, we've got class notebook, we've got assignments, we've got grades and so on. So that's some of the bits and pieces that have already been added. To add some more different tabs up here, or they're sometimes called apps, you can just press the plus sign and that will give you some more options. We'll talk about that later on. Right now, I just want to show you some of the functions straight away. So beside the name of your team, you will see more options. So if you can click on that just now, then manage team, it's going to give you some bits and pieces. So straight away, you can see who the owners are, and you can see who the students are. There's the option to mute some students. And I'm also going to change Mrs. Irvin, who is a teacher, or head teacher. I'm going to change her ownership down to a member. And you'll see when I do that, she pops down in that side of things. We can then add some members. Again, just as similar as earlier. And if there is somebody who is a member and you want to change them to an owner, I would just simply do that and it'll pop back up again. But I would also say at this point, it's probably best not to put students as members as owners rather, because they would have admin rights, so it would be much easier just to keep them as members. Okay, so there's some other options along here. We have channels, which we'll talk about in a wee moment. We've only got one channel just now, and I'll talk to you about adding some more. We've also got settings, and this is quite useful for when you are talking about who can do what within it. So member permissions. Would you like the members to create and update channels? Now remember, that would be your pupils. If it was a staff one, you might change the memberships here. You might allow your members to do that. I've got owners can delete all messages. I might not want that in mine, so it's worth looking through these options to decide what you're going to allow your members to do, because for some of you, you might be using a staff only one. Okay, then we've got some at mentions. So show members the option to at a team name and give members the option to at the channel. So again, you can untick and tick that. Really, this is about personal preference here, so you might want to have a wee look at what you're wanting to do and who is going to be allowed to do what within your team. And obviously, if it's a class one, that might change. Okay, so we're going to then go into the team code. Now, remember earlier, you could join or create a team. So if you're creating a team, that's different. But if you're wanting to join a team, then that's where the person would generate the code from, and they would share it with you so that you can then join the team and find it. Okay, so that might be a little bit easier if you're doing one across a couple of schools, maybe if you're doing a cluster. So we're going to leave it at that just now. That gives you a few options you can look at. There's going to be more detail later because we're going to look at how to change settings for your own personal use and for notifications. Now the analytics will be very quiet just now because we only have 3 users, and we're going to talk a little bit more about analytics and insights later on, and that will give you more detail about where you're going to find things, about what people are doing, who's logging on, who's accessing, and so on. Okay, so we don't need to know any more about that. We've got some options down the side, some quick links as well. We can go straight here to add member. So we don't really need to know any more. I'm going to go back to general page, and you can see that's the posts, files, that wee area's back for us again. But this time I'm going to add a channel, and I use those same 3 dots, and I'm going to add a channel, and I'm just going to call this literacy channel, so that perhaps you want an area that is all literacy, and that will be handy when you're using a class notebook, which is something we're going to talk about in the next webinar. Okay, I'm going to allow that just a wee chance there to add it, and then I'm going to also add a numeracy one. Okay, so that's giving you a couple of options so that you can go in there and have some chats. I'm not going to spend too long going over the chat function. Any of you who use social media will be kind of familiar with this setup. It's very much like Facebook. If you press your at button, you can tag somebody in a conversation. So Mrs. Irvin or Josh Doherty, whoever's in your class, you can add their name here, and that will come up with a message for them, and it'll be tagged in it. And over here, you can see my activity page. That will pop up onto their activity, so it will highlight something that they need to see. So if you're wanting to answer a question directly to them, or you want them to remind them of something or direct them to a certain point, that's where you'll find it. Okay, so we're going to go back to our general class just now, and we're going to have a quick look at assignments. Now, this is an area where you can upload a full assignment, and you can upload all your resources, and it's kept in one neat and tidy place. I've got to say, I've found this really much easier within the teams I'm working in. So I'm just going to press create just now. That's as simple as that. It gives me 2 options, assignment or quiz. We're going to talk about quizzes later, but I'm just going to choose assignment. Now there's no other assignments there because this is a brand new team. And this is what you're going to see coming up. Now I am just going to call this the tiger who came to tea. Now if I want to, I can add a category here, and I'm going to add literacy. There's not really much more to do for that one. That just helps me when I'm filtering later. So imagine you have lots and lots of assignments set up and you want to filter them. That's where that tag is going to come in, okay? So my instructions will be read the tiger who came to tea. Answer the questions. Now yours is going to be far more detailed, and here I'm going to add resources. And I just want to show you some things that you can add up at this point, because if you choose to, you can have anything at all from your own device. You just simply press upload from this device, and perhaps you've got a list of questions that you want to add in there. You can also create a link. So for example, I would add here a YouTube link to the story The Tiger Who Came to Tea, and then that person who is in my team can go and listen to that story. And then afterwards, I would upload maybe a list of questions about the story or an activity related to the story, so that it's all those resources are in one place. This means that when a pupil comes along, they have all of it in one nice neat folder. And also when they're finished, they can add it into this same area. So for you, it's going to be far easier to organise. Now, I'm also going to show you the rubric. Now, some of you may use these already. You don't have to add this in, I have to add, because you can see I've got a few already. I'm just going to click on this one to show you it. But I will add in a brand new one as well, so you can see what it looks like. So I've added in there, I've turned my rubric into a learning intention and a success criteria. So I can use it that way. I've not added any points. But if I want to add in a brand new rubric, I simply do the same thing. It's going to come up that I've got a few options here, but I don't need any of these. I'm going to create a new rubric. I'll still call it The Tiger Who Came to Tea. Now this is the one that it's set up as. You can see that it gives you excellent, good, fair. You could change that to maybe spicy, medium, hot. I'm not sure what everybody would use in that area. And you can see we scroll right down. You can add in some more. Now for this one here, I don't need all of these columns. I'm not going to create all of them. I might just make them hot, medium, and mild. And then in these areas here, I can differentiate my success criteria so that when the pupils are completing it, they'll know that the mild, if they want to give the mild one a go, that's the activities that they must meet. That's the criteria they must meet. And then I might have some challenge in the hot. So it gives them a real differentiation here within just that rubric. But again, you don't need to do it if you don't want to. And then you'd simply press attach. And so far that's given them what they need to be successful. I'm assigning it to the testing team that I've made up. But if I click on this, I can actually set it to several classes. So that's really useful if you were doing a full school thing, or maybe even a level, one across second level, for example. In your rubric, you could have a success criteria for 5, 6, and 7. So there's lots of opportunities here to really change. You can also just choose which students you add it to, so that if you were wanting to differentiate that way, you could do it just to one spelling group or to maybe a support group. That's up to you. And you would just type in their individual names, and that would mean it wouldn't go to everybody. Now, nobody knows who's got which assignments, so that's a really good way to keep that private. It would only flash up on their own screen. They won't know what anyone else has been assigned. So it's a nice way to really do that work without it being too public. And I know some people are maybe a wee bit aware of what others are doing, and they might feel a wee bit sort of self-conscious about it. Okay, down here we've got the due dates, and we can have here, I'm going to set mine at the end of the month. We had some children saying to us actually that they were a bit worried about the due dates, and I was going in and changing them. So you can change that later on, but we can maybe make that the 26th of June, make it the end of the term. I think a lot of our pupils were beginning to panic because they weren't completing the assignments in time. But as you can see, we've got to add a date in this area, okay? So I've also left it late hand-ins because for me, it's not about a specific date. But perhaps if you're at a secondary school or you wanted something completed by a certain time, then you might want to edit that and change that they couldn't hand it in late. That's something that you can look at. So again, that's your personal preferences. You can go into there and have a play with it. So I'm going to assign that just now with that big purple button there. And you can see in my assignments now, I've got one. When I click on it, it will tell me who's done it and who hasn't. Now we know that we've just started that, but it will, if somebody has handed that in, we'll be able to see it. And we'll also see that it's tagged with literacy. We can look at the student view, and that's what it's going to look like to them. There's also the immersive reader option over here. It won't read everything, it will only read the instructions. So if you want it to be a more detailed one, then perhaps add in more information to the instructions so that the immersive reader can read that to whoever you're assigning that to. So for a dyslexic child or someone with literacy difficulties, that's really useful. But again, it would have to be in that literacy area. Okay, so we're going to go back just now. There's also an area for feedback. Now, I had a question beforehand on the webinar. Unfortunately, we can't do a two-way conversation this way. Once you've handed in the feedback, they then can't comment to you, so it's not a two-way conversation. The chat function, which we'll look at in a wee moment, that's also been turned off for pupils, so there's not that one-to-one. But we can use class notebooks for that, and I'll talk about it in our second webinar. I'm just really aware we might run out of time. Okay, so you can see then who has had theirs not handed in. And then when we go back to general, we can see that we have an assignment flashed up. And again, that will flash up on the pupil's screen who has it had assigned to them. Now I've added it to the full channel, so that's why it's showing up in the full channel. Okay. Now I'm going to take you into one of my other teams just now so that you can see what it looks like when a child has completed it. Okay, so I've now taken you into a different team, and this is another testing one, but one that I've set up already so that I can show you what assignments looks like when a pupil has completed an activity. So when we go into the assignments, you'll see all the ones that I've already given out, and it tells you how many have handed it in. So if you were to give it to a full class of 33, it would tell you how many out of 33. I've only given it to the one pupil in my class, but that's why it shows 0 out of 1 or 1 out of 1. And then I'm going to click on this, and it will show me the status. Now, normally this would be a full class. I've only got one pupil. And when I click on it, it tells me that it's handed in 2 days late. And I can also opt to give some feedback. So I'm going to just click on the handed in 2 days late, because then it will let me see what he has done. So this was another one that I've already made up that was also related to a tiger who came to tea. And I've given some feedback in it here. You remember to write your answers in full sentences. Now this area that I'm seeing on the screen is what Josh has uploaded for me. Now obviously it's not his work, it's just a wee activity that I uploaded so that I could use as an example here, but this would be what you would see from whatever the child has uploaded. Now, they've also uploaded a picture here, and they've uploaded this Word document. So down this list here I can see what they've uploaded, and that way it's all in one area for that one subject. So if it was a project all about the tiger who came to tea, and I asked him to design a cover, do a book review, predict what will happen next, a list of inferential questions, whatever it is that you would be doing, all the answers and all the evidence that he would create would be there. Now he can upload it as a photo, he can upload it as a Word document. It's exactly the same as the previous screen when we were creating our own assignments, where we could show it as a link, we could show it as a file from our own documents. So it can be photos, and quite often when I'm doing it with my own child at home, it's a photo that I upload, because it's just far easier to take a photo of a sheet of paper rather than asking a younger child to type it. Okay, so I'm just going to close that just now. I can go into edit assignment. Now this is one I've previously set up, and you can see the date and the time is due. So I can change the date here. We can add some more resources. So maybe somebody's saying, oh, that was a wee bit tricky. Or I can go back and add the categories, remember, for filtering. And remember, I just want to point out here that add resources, again, this might be just something you were thinking about when you looked at Josh's. When he gets to upload his as a pupil point of view, it's going to look exactly the same. He can upload any resources that he's got, whether it's in his OneDrive or from his own device, and that can be a photo, it can be for a Word document, a PDF, anything that he's got that's going to help you to understand. Might even be a link, maybe he's uploaded a video of himself completing an activity. So that is the way it looks for you, but it's very similar to them as well. Now, as I said before, when you're at this main page where it says assignments, it shows you all the ones that you have created and who's handed it in. And when you click on it, it will give you straight away in this area who has completed it, who's handed it in. You can click on this for a shortcut to feedback. It can't be one-to-one, I'm afraid. The feedback is only going one way, but again, as I said earlier, we can look at that with class notebooks. Now, we're going to go back to general. It's still linked a little bit to assignments, so we're going to stick with that just now. Remember earlier I was talking about some extra tabs. So we can call these tabs or apps, but if we press this button here, we can see add a tab, and that's what we're going to do just now. And this gives you several here. Some of them are not actually compatible with the Glow version of this just now, so just be aware of that. We're going to choose Insights, and Insights is where you're going to find the data. Now, I'm not going to post to the channel, that just means it comes up in that chat area that we were looking at earlier. But once we've pressed save, okay, there we go, and it's just telling you there not to have that box checked because the pupils won't have access to this. So this is just purely a tool for teachers to see, and it's going to tell you who has been online, who has been online over these different periods of time. Now, I am going to choose all time. I want to just see if they have access to it at all. Now, if we look here, we can see that on, we're just zoomed in there, on these dates, this is when Josh was online. So we've got here the 18th. We could change this to just files when he was uploading files. We can change this to assignments. This might be quite easy for you to see. When are they doing assignments? If they are, again, we're going to change that back to all time. So just be really careful with that, because sometimes I've heard some people say to me, oh, they've not been online at all, and actually it was today they hadn't been online. Although it might be useful if you're asking them to come online and you want to check if they have or not, that tool up there, and obviously you can specify the date as well, just to really see, you know, what the uptake was like at that point. But I'm going to choose all time just to give you an idea. And I've chosen assignments. So he was active on the 28th of April here. So he must have uploaded an assignment. I think we'll just go back to all activities, so it can give you an idea with just that little blue dot of what times he's using it. And it kind of gives you a nice overview of when they're using it and what they're using it for. Because if you look back there, there's also the option for chat. So if there's many that are going in for just for a chat and not doing anything, it's going to be able to show you that up as well. It's going to tell you on-time assignments, what your percentages are. And if you wish, you can actually look at individual students here. Now, obviously, I've only got one student in my team, so I'm only going to pick one. It's on all students just now, but you can go into specific ones, and that might help you to assess how they're getting on, or, you know, which times that's maybe the most busy on Teams. That might be really useful for a meeting. So you might look at all your pupils and say, wow, they're always on in the afternoon rather than the morning, or vice versa. So I'll know to make up a team meeting during that time. Okay, so that is Insights. It's been really useful for us just to be able to see who's accessing it and when. We're going to go back to that general page just now. So let's just let that load. Okay, so the next thing, we'd mentioned earlier something about notifications. So we want to really look at that again. And there's a few different tools that we can use for that, but immediately we're going to just look at channels. I'm going to add in another channel here just so that you can see the differences. So I'm going to make that a literacy one again. Okay. Now, you'll see that when you move around near that channel, that general channel, you'll see those three dots. We're going to choose those three dots and we're going to manage channel. Okay. Now, this area here is really good if you want to have a channel where you post information but the pupils don't respond, because I know that there's a few chat pages out there that get really filled quickly with lots of memes and pictures and ideas. Yep. So I'm going to change that to owners can post messages. And what that means is an owner tends to be a member of staff. And remember, I showed you earlier, we can change even members of staff to just being members rather than owners. So it might just be you that's actually using it. Okay, then in literacy, I might do the same, but this time you'll see that it looks a little bit different. So I'm just going to show you again how I get into that. So back to literacy, and we are going to go to manage channel. And there we go. We need to choose, it's off just now. We need to choose on. And then you can see that there's some more options for you, whether you allow members to reply, if only moderators can start a new post, you can manage who the moderators are. You can see it's the team owners. So there's a few more options here. We're going to go back to general just now. And now we're going to go into files. And in the next webinar, I'm going to show you notifications for all of the channels, your teams, and for your own personal use as well. Okay, so you can see that I've created some folders already. I know that some people quite like having a folder for each pupil, and it's an area where they can upload their information, they can upload their activities. You know, you can make it a literacy one, a maths one. Now, if the child wants to do that, they can also create their own folder and documents. What you see here is very similar to their page, okay? So if you press upload, it's going to take you to your own folder. So you can upload something that's on your own computer or wherever you are. You can create a new folder here. So it gives you these options, or it can just create a Word document. So we're just going to create a new folder. We're just going to call that test. And when we have created that new folder, you can see these little blue lines. That just means it's new. So we're going to click on it, and that will take us inside the folder. And it's really similar to what you've been doing in school if you've made up folders and staff shared and so on. So this time we might create up a new document, or we can upload a document, and we can also download as well. So let's just go back to files. If there is a document there that you really want to save, or for the child, remember they'll see a very similar screen to you, then you simply click on it here and press download there. Or you use those three dots again, and it will let you download it. It will even let you open it up in SharePoint or open up in a browser. Okay, now I won't do either of those things just now. You can have a look at that later. You can also choose if you've accidentally added something to delete it, and that's just simply clicking on tick and delete. And again, you've got it, some more options, that quick option there. Okay, so those three dots are really useful. We're just going to say yes to delete it. Okay, so our next point is just having a look at, we're just going to look at the chat option just now. So remember, this is probably a more useful tool if you're planning to message a member of staff, because when you're going into it, you don't really have the option to do one-to-one. And that's something that we've spoken to Glow Scotland about. And obviously that is about safeguarding our children as well. So we're looking for more ways to make sure that it's safer, basically. So this is really similar to an email. If you know that person's email address, which I do off by heart. There we go. So we can send that to, we've got some here already. And this would just take you straight back into one of the conversations you're already having. You can also create a group, just a similar way to the way that you would with an email. And I'm going to just send one to, we'll send it to Mrs. Docherty, just so you can have a look, because there's a few different ones. And again, it's Mrs. Docherty from Moorfoot that I want to send it to. And you can see I've just sent her one before, but I'm just going to tell her again, hi, just a test, ignore, and I'm going to send that. Now in this area here, you have some options. We can audio call using Teams. We can just have a video chat just using that chat option here. We don't need to set up a meeting. And we can also add more people, so we can make it a group. We can add files. We can also add in, we'll just add this in here, if there was an organisation or if there was any activity that we wanted to share with her here. So that's all those options. There we go. We've got some bits and pieces from others that we can share with Mrs. Doherty. Oh, and she's just replied, okay. And you can see that this has popped up. This is what we call the banner, but it will also be in my activity at the side here. So this is just a really simple function, and it's quite similar to an email, but I find it quite useful for just doing a quick chat while you're already on. You'll also get notifications via your activities, and it's also useful if you're just doing a small number of people with a meeting. But again, remember that wouldn't be for the pupils. Okay, so we've come to the end of our webinar just now. I've had a look through the chat to make sure that I've not missed any questions. Our second webinar is going to focus on a few more details. But just before we go, I hope that everybody's had no problems accessing it. I know we've had a few little blips today, and thank you all for muting your conversations. The other thing that I would just like to highlight, if you've not had the chance to do it yet, can you try and download the app? It's far quicker than using a browser, an internet page. So if it's a desktop app or the app on a tablet, I will show you next time how you can change your accounts. So I know that a few people may be using the app and they've got children who are also needing access to Teams, and that's quite simple. I've shared that on our school's Twitter page, but I'll share that with all of you as well. Okay, thank you so much for joining me, and let me know if there's anything else that you need, and we can cover that in the next webinar too. Thanks.